There are only seats for my family.
This was Emily's response when I asked why there was no seat for me at my son Kevin's wedding, even though Tom and I were both attending. Emily had always been hostile toward me. To avoid conflict, I'd kept my distance as much as possible, but today wasn't just about Emily. It was Kevin's special day too. Skipping the ceremony wasn't an option. Yet, Emily called me an embarrassment and removed me from the guest list without Kevin's knowledge. Her mother, Victoria, apologized repeatedly for Emily's outrageous behavior. However, Emily showed no remorse and kept spewing insults. When I was too stunned to respond, Emily refused to let me attend the ceremony.
It would embarrass Tom and Kevin. Please don't attend.
I see. Got it.
I was too shocked to even be angry, and Tom agreed with Emily's words, then walked away. As I followed and tried to calm Tom down, Kevin, unaware of the situation, approached us. Seeing Tom's anger, Kevin looked confused, so I explained what had happened. Shocked, Kevin quickly asked the staff to arrange a seat for me, but Emily stopped them. An argument, completely out of place for a wedding, broke out. I told Kevin to respect Emily's wishes, and I withdrew from attending the ceremony. Tom, furious at Emily's behavior, decided not to attend either.
I no longer feel like celebrating your marriage to Kevin.
Emily seemed to want Tom to attend, but he ordered a taxi instead. Both Tom and I had been ready to accept whoever Kevin chose to marry, but there was nothing we could do if she refused to accept us. Listening to Tom grumble about Emily in the taxi home, I resolved to cut ties with her completely. Maybe it's time to stop offering any support too. My name's Susan, and I'm 54. Ever since my son, Kevin, who's turning 30 this year, moved out 5 years ago, I've been living with my husband, Tom, who's a year older than me. After having Kevin, I became a stay-at-home mom. Once Kevin grew up and became more independent, I found myself with a lot of free time. I thought about getting a part-time job and mentioned it to Tom.
Now that you've got some time, why not spend it doing what you love?
Since he encouraged me, I've been enjoying my hobby of sewing in between housework. The lunch bags for Tom and Kevin are all handmade by me. I've even started making neckties and handkerchiefs, but rather than minding it, kind-hearted Tom and Kevin are so supportive. They even ask for specific designs for the next ones. On top of that, I've heard Tom's co-workers and team members have given positive feedback, which makes me really happy. Kevin runs his own business, and when he first started the company, I made handmade tote bags as promotional items. That's become a way for me to express myself, and I'm enjoying every bit of it. One day, while I was enjoying my usual routine, Kevin shared some exciting news. He told us he had found someone he wanted to marry. She worked as an administrative assistant at Kevin's company, and he described her as a very dependable woman. For someone as kind and easygoing as Kevin, she might be the perfect match. A few days later, Kevin brought her over to meet us.
Nice to meet you. I'm Emily. I'm looking forward to getting to know you.
Emily smiled warmly as she introduced herself.
Kevin is so kind that he can be a bit unreliable sometimes, but I'd appreciate it if you could support him.
Tom, likely trying to be modest, mentioned Kevin's unreliability. There were times I worried about Kevin seeming unreliable, but I never truly thought he was. After all, if he were genuinely unreliable, he wouldn't be able to run a company. Yet Emily chuckled softly and said,
It's okay, I'm pretty dependable. I actually find Kevin's unreliable side kind of cute.
I was a bit surprised since I expected her to deny it, even a little. Tom also looked slightly taken aback, giving a wry smile. Just as Kevin had said, she seemed dependable, though I got the sense she might have a quirky side too. Still, we weren't going to be living together, and she was the woman Kevin had chosen. Both Tom and I had decided beforehand that we wouldn't oppose whoever Kevin brought home, so we went ahead with their wedding plans. As Kevin and Emily were leaving after their 2-hour visit, I gave Emily a pouch I had made for her. Emily looked a bit puzzled, as if she wasn't sure why she was getting a pouch. Kevin explained that it was handmade by me, but maybe Emily didn't really need it.
I see. Thank you.
She said, putting it away in her bag. Even though she thanked me, she didn't seem particularly happy about it, which made me feel a little disappointed. I knew it was selfish of me to expect her to be thrilled when I gave it to her out of the blue, without her asking for it. Still, since no one had ever reacted that way before, it stung a bit. I decided to learn from this and ask people if they wanted something before giving it to them next time. After that, Emily started coming over whenever Kevin visited our home. The first time, we treated them by ordering delivery from a nearby steakhouse, but we couldn't rely on delivery every time. Whenever Kevin visited, I usually prepared meals with lots of vegetables. Since I taught Kevin how to cook when he was a kid, he can manage on his own, but his busy work schedule often leads to an unbalanced diet. That's why he comes over about once a month for my home-cooked meal, but relying on takeout every time defeats the purpose. So I asked Kevin if Emily would mind having a home-cooked meal.
Emily really wants to feel at home.
Hearing that, I decided to cook for them, starting with their second visit. After chatting together for a bit, I went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Every time, Emily insists on helping, saying she'll give me a hand. At first, I was happy, thinking she was a considerate young woman. But now, I dread this time. She smiles warmly when talking with Tom and Kevin, but as soon as it's just the two of us in the kitchen, she turns cold to me.
Susan, are you just a housewife who does chores all day?
Tom, who works as a manager at a big company, and Kevin, who runs his own business, work outside the home. In contrast, she probably doesn't think highly of me since I stay at home. Emily's parents divorced when she was young, and she grew up watching her mother struggle. Because of that, she believes women should be self-reliant and not depend on men. I feel for her and understand she had a tough time, but it's hard when she seems to disapprove of me being a homemaker.
You're still in your 50s, right, Susan? Maybe you should consider working now.
Emily probably thought she was giving me advice, but it felt like unnecessary interference. Just because her mother worked and struggled doesn't mean I should experience the same hardships. If I were truly ignorant of the world and lacked common sense, her comments might be justified. But I worked until I had Kevin, and I've also stayed socially active through school events and community engagements. It doesn't feel good to be belittled just because I don't have a job outside the home. Even if she's marrying Kevin and joining our family, I wish she'd show a bit more sensitivity. I don't want to speak ill of the woman Kevin chose, but I'm worried I won't be able to build a good mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship with Emily. Since then, Emily has repeatedly told me to get a job.
When are you going to stop being a freeloader? Come on, let's get to work.
I'm not a freeloader.
Oh, you're going to say being a homemaker is a real job, right? That's just an excuse.
I tried to argue back, but Emily cut me off.
It's one thing if you're raising kids, but Kevin is independent now. You can work, can't you? Stop making excuses and leave the freeloader life behind.
She kept talking so fast that I couldn't even get a word in. She even mocked the pouch I gave her, calling it something a housewife made just to kill time.
I couldn't just throw it away, so I gave it to my coworker. Please don't give me anything again.
I had no intention of giving something to someone who didn't want it, and if she gave it to her coworker, that was fine. But I couldn't understand why she felt the need to tell me that to my face. I talked to Tom about it, but we couldn't come up with a way to improve the situation. If I were being a difficult mother-in-law, I could simply stop. But I wasn't. It felt more like I was being mistreated as a mother-in-law. One day, while Tom and I were both troubled over this, Emily came over with Kevin as usual and started praising Tom.
I read that only a little over 5% of employees at big companies become managers. That's amazing.
Apparently, she looked it up.
I respect Kevin for running his own business, but Susan is just.
For the first time, Emily showed her true attitude in front of Tom and Kevin, not just me. Her face showed a hint of regret, but it was too late. Tom and Kevin had already heard everything.
What did you say about Mom?
Kevin immediately asked. Emily reluctantly admitted that she disapproved of me not working. Tom quickly spoke up.
Susan stays home because I asked her to. Please don't speak badly of her.
I respect that your mom works, but every family has their own way of doing things. I want Emily and me to build a home that reflects who we are.
Hearing Kevin talk about their future home, Emily pouted but seemed to understand. But it was only for the moment. Later, when I went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, Emily followed me. As soon as we were alone, she yelled.
Guiding me into confessing like that was so manipulative. Are you trying to bully me as a mother-in-law?
I hadn't said a word back then. Emily had simply gone overboard in her attempt to praise Tom and Kevin and ended up exposing herself.
I'm offering to support Kevin, who you think is unreliable. So you should just go along with what I say.
Emily pushed her unreasonable demands on me. Even though she was angry, she kept her voice low enough that Tom and Kevin in the living room wouldn't hear. Despite being scolded by them just moments before, she showed no remorse and instead lashed out at me. I realized there was no point in trying anymore and gave up on building a good relationship with her. I'll just treat her as an outsider, even if she's my daughter-in-law, and keep things distant. I decided on this approach and told Kevin I wouldn't be getting too close to Emily. He understood and promised not to bring Emily to our home anymore. Maybe this could be seen as me being a difficult mother-in-law, but Tom assured me there was no need to force a relationship that wasn't working. A while later, the wedding invitation for Kevin and Emily arrived. We'd heard in advance that they planned to have the ceremony at a large wedding venue. Since Kevin runs a company that sells tableware used by the British royal family, he has business dealings with companies and restaurants of all sizes. Considering how future business relationships might be affected, Kevin and Emily decided to invite everyone, regardless of the size of their deals. Because of this, the wedding ended up being a large event with over 300 guests. On the day of the wedding, Tom and I were escorted by Kevin to the bridal suite to greet Emily and her mother, Victoria. After knocking, Emily's voice called out, so we opened the door. When she turned around, she was already in her wedding dress, and she looked stunning. However, the moment she saw me following Tom and Kevin, her face briefly contorted. I knew she didn't like me, but I hoped that at least on her wedding day, she would refrain from making snide remarks and behave civilly. Tom offered his congratulations, and Emily smiled warmly, thanking him. Unfortunately, Victoria had gone off to greet the staff and guests, so we didn't get a chance to meet her then. Tom and I decided to head to the venue to start greeting the staff and guests ourselves. We planned to confirm our seating at the reception desk first and then make our rounds, but something confusing happened. My name was nowhere to be found. Tom borrowed the guest list at the reception desk and double-checked, but my name still wasn't there. We tried to reach Kevin, but he was busy with final checks with the staff and wasn't available to talk. With no other choice, Tom and I headed back to the bridal suite to ask Emily about the situation. Victoria was there, and Tom and I greeted her briefly. Then I asked Emily why there wasn't a seat for me.
There are only seats for my family.
Victoria looked confused, not understanding what was going on. Tom frowned and asked for clarification.
I can't introduce a jobless freeloader as family to our business partners. That's just embarrassing.
Emily laughed at me without a hint of guilt. Victoria, finally understanding the situation, hurried to scold Emily, but Emily ignored her and argued back.
But Mom worked hard her whole life, and just living off others without making any effort is the same as being a freeloader. What's wrong with telling the truth?
Emily's harsh words left Victoria pale and apologizing to me repeatedly. But Emily didn't seem to grasp why Victoria was apologizing and told her it wasn't necessary. I was too shocked to speak.
It would be humiliating for Tom, who has a respectable job, and for Kevin, who runs a business. So please don't attend the wedding.
Even with Victoria trying to stop her, Emily continued her insults and refused to let me attend.
I see. Got it.
Tom said that and turned to leave the bridal suite, so I followed him. I didn't understand exactly what Tom meant by that, but I could tell he was angry. As I tried to calm Tom, reminding him it was Kevin's wedding and we should avoid making a scene, Kevin appeared, having just finished his meeting with the staff.
Did something happen?
He looked clueless about what was going on.
What is wrong with her?
Tom, still fuming, directed his anger at Kevin. Kevin, understandably confused, had no idea what Tom was talking about. I explained there was no seat for me and what Emily had said in the bridal suite. Kevin had no idea about my missing seat. Apparently, because of his busy work schedule, he had left all the wedding preparations to Emily. I couldn't help but feel frustrated with Kevin too, for dumping the wedding planning on Emily and blaming it on his job.
I'm sorry. I'll have them get your seat ready right now.
Kevin was about to stop a staff member when Emily stormed out of the bridal suite and shouted,
Non-family members aren't allowed. Enough of this.
Victoria, who had followed Emily, tried to scold her, but Emily refused to listen.
Are you saying my mom isn't family?
Kevin, usually so gentle, raised his voice, causing Emily to flinch for a moment. But even then, she stubbornly refused to let me attend.
No way. The bride is the star of the wedding, and I don't want her there.
At that point, I no longer felt like celebrating, so I decided to respect Emily's wishes. I told the staff, who were scrambling to arrange a new seat, that it wouldn't be necessary. But Kevin was firmly against it. The groom and the bride's mother insisted the seat should be prepared, while the bride and the groom's mother insisted it shouldn't. Watching the confused and flustered staff, I felt guilty and told Kevin, "Emily is right. The bride is the star of the wedding. Respect her wishes. Since that's what she wants, I'll keep my distance from her from now on." Emily's face lit up with a triumphant smirk, her breath huffing with satisfaction. I was astonished by how spiteful her expression was, completely unfitting for a bride who should be full of joy.
If Susan can't attend, then I won't either.
Emily said Tom could still attend, but Tom, angry with her, replied,
I no longer feel like celebrating your marriage to Kevin. Remove my seat too.
Seeing Tom, who had always been kind to Emily, so angry made it clear to me that he now considered her a stranger. Perhaps Kevin realized what was happening. With time running out and unable to resolve the conflict, he reluctantly asked the staff to remove Tom's seat as well. Emily still wanted Tom to attend, but he ignored her, turned around, and walked away. I gave Victoria a brief farewell and followed Tom out, heading home. In the taxi on the way home, Tom muttered complaints about Emily under his breath. Both Tom and I had been ready to accept whoever Kevin chose to marry. But even if we were willing to accept her, there was nothing we could do if she refused to accept us. In my heart, I resolved to honor Emily's wishes and never engage with her again. Perhaps we should stop offering any support too. About a week after the wedding, Kevin came by with Emily for the first time in a while. He had brought her to apologize, but her attitude was far from apologetic.
I mean, it's not fair that you just sew as a hobby every day and don't even work.
Emily still repeated the same belittling remarks about me. Whether I worked or not was none of her business. Emily kept telling me to work because she assumed that a mother-in-law with too much time on her hands would inevitably bully her daughter-in-law.
Instead of being bullied by her, aren't you the one mistreating your mother-in-law?
When Tom shot back, Emily pouted like a child and said,
That wasn't my intention.
Besides, Susan earns about the same income as I do.
What?
Emily looked shocked, her mouth hanging open at Tom's words. The truth was, ever since Kevin moved out, I had been working as a handmade artisan. What started as a hobby grew after Kevin suggested I sell my creations on an online marketplace due to the positive feedback. Now, I even have my own sales website, and thankfully, my products sell out almost immediately after being posted. I also share videos of my work process online, which brings in additional income. During the end-of-year season, when sales for children's school bag sets peak, I sometimes earn more than Tom does in a month.
I didn't know.
Emily's face turned pale, but Kevin insisted he had explained it multiple times.
You were probably just going to say being a homemaker is a real job.
I tried to explain, but Emily had already made up her mind and refused to listen.
Don't they tell you at work to listen to people until they're done talking?
Kevin scolded her, and Emily hung her head. For the first time, I saw Kevin as the competent business owner he was, not the overly gentle son I'd worried about. I felt relieved knowing he wouldn't just let Emily boss him around. At the same time, I realized he no longer needed my support. On my sales website and videos, I had been promoting Kevin's company's products by sharing links and giving them exposure. Some of my followers even told me they bought his products because he was my son. But after what happened at the wedding, I removed the links. I thought there might be a slight impact on Kevin's company sales, but it seems there's no need to worry. I was confident Kevin could manage his business just fine without my followers' support. It looks like he'll be okay even without referrals from my site.
Even though your products are in a completely different category, I really appreciated the exposure.
When I murmured this, Kevin thanked me. Beside him, Emily's face was still pale. Emily worked as Kevin's company's administrative assistant and was also in charge of managing the website. While specialized tasks were outsourced to professionals, both Kevin and Emily communicated with those contractors. The contractors had mentioned that most individual online orders came from a certain handmade artisan's website. Emily clearly never imagined that website was mine. For Kevin's business, which mainly dealt with companies and restaurants, the sales from individual orders were probably small. Still, those orders were important for spreading word of mouth and building a reputation. Even knowing they had lost one of those sales channels, Emily showed no intention of apologizing or changing her attitude.
Don't act so high and mighty just because you make a little money.
She spat those words out and stormed out of our house. I asked Kevin, who wasn't trying to go after Emily, "Aren't you going to follow her?"
Just leave her be.
Kevin gave a wry smile, clearly having his own thoughts.
If I chase after her now, it'll just inflate her ego.
Then Kevin explained what had happened at the wedding. Emily was apparently thrilled that I didn't attend, but Victoria was upset, which ruined the heartfelt letter Emily had prepared. Emily ended the letter by saying she respected Victoria for raising her alone, but Victoria didn't shed a single tear.
It's hard to be respected as a mother who failed to raise her daughter properly.
After the wedding, Emily was furious at Victoria for ruining the day.
What's wrong with telling the truth?
Victoria probably threw Emily's own words right back at her. This escalated into a full-blown argument, and now Emily was being ignored by Victoria. Moreover, it seems that several business associates who were invited witnessed the commotion right before the ceremony. Kevin was informed by his employees that some of these associates expressed concerns about whether Emily was truly fit to be the CEO's wife. It seemed Emily often acted as if her opinions were the same as Kevin's, which eroded the employees' trust in her. She was competent at her job, so Kevin had kept her in the company, but now he was reconsidering.
I'm sorry for everything. I might still cause trouble in the future.
You're our son. We don't see it as trouble. Lean on us when you need to.
Kevin apologized, but Tom's words reassured him, and he left with a lighter heart. I had no intention of maintaining any relationship with Emily, but I hadn't cut ties with Kevin. He was still our beloved son. Tom and I were determined to help Kevin as much as we could whenever he needed it. 2 months later, Emily suddenly showed up at our house alone. She declared that I wasn't family and refused to let me attend the wedding, yet here she is. I was stunned by her nerve. Still, since she was technically our daughter-in-law, I couldn't just ignore her, so I let her in. What brings you here today? I deliberately spoke in a formal tone, but Emily didn't seem to care.
Could you say that Tom and Susan missed the wedding because something urgent came up?
Out of the blue, Emily asked me to lie. Apparently, some of Kevin's business partners were suggesting canceling or reducing contracts, and sales were declining. But realistically, there's rarely an urgent matter more important than a son's wedding. Maybe if a close family member had passed away, but in that case, the wedding would have been postponed or canceled. No one would believe such a lie. Yet I couldn't understand why she was asking us to lie for her.
If this continues, it could disrupt our lives.
Emily pleaded desperately, but Kevin's company was supposed to be doing well. Kevin himself was confident that he didn't need referrals from my website, and there was no reason their livelihood should be affected. As I wondered about Emily's behavior, Kevin suddenly rushed into the living room, clearly flustered. He had a key to our house, but always rang the doorbell after moving out. I was surprised to see him come in so urgently. "What's going on?" I asked, and Kevin glared at Emily, shouting,
Embezzling company funds is completely unacceptable.
"Embezzlement." Hearing such an alarming word left me deeply shaken. I had thought Emily was a strong-willed, disrespectful daughter-in-law, but I never imagined she'd embezzle money. Considering she always called me a freeloading parasite for not working, I thought she'd have a strong sense of financial responsibility. If she understands how hard it is to earn money, how could she embezzle? I was on the verge of panic, but I knew I needed to stay calm to handle this situation. "Let's just calm down and talk this through." My heart was pounding, but I did my best to maintain composure. I sat Kevin down on the living room sofa and made him some chamomile tea, known for its calming effects. He took a sip and let out a deep breath, as if trying to release his anger. Then he confronted Emily.
Why did you use company funds without my permission?
I thought maybe Kevin was exaggerating in his anger, but it seemed Emily had indeed embezzled the money.
The company's money belongs to the CEO, right? So as the CEO's wife, I can use it too.
Emily spouted her absurd logic, showing no sign of remorse. Company funds belong to the company, not the CEO. I thought this was common knowledge. For a moment, I wondered if I was the one with the wrong idea, but I wasn't. According to Kevin, company funds are the property of the corporation. not the CEO's personal assets, so using them for personal purposes is illegal. It's also a serious crime that doesn't just result in a fine. Emily started to panic at the idea of becoming a criminal, but when she heard the likelihood was low, she arrogantly dismissed it. Embezzlement isn't a crime that requires the victim to file a complaint, but unless the victim presses charges, the police won't investigate. Moreover, if the person embezzling is a spouse, there's a legal exemption that could prevent punishment. Kevin had actually studied law in college. He initially aimed to become a lawyer, but ended up starting his tableware company after falling in love with the industry during college. His legal knowledge was now helping him run his business.
It's over.
Kevin muttered, and then asked Emily for a divorce.
Not only did you mistreat my mom, but I can't stay with someone who squandered company funds.
Hearing Kevin's decision, Emily protested.
That's so unfair. I didn't know.
It's possible that Emily didn't know company funds couldn't be freely used by the CEO. However, using the money behind Kevin's back meant she spent it on something she couldn't tell him about. Curious, I asked what she had spent it on, and Emily snapped at me.
That's none of your business, Susan.
It might not be Mom's business, but it is mine. What did you use the money for?
When Kevin asked, Emily clammed up. But the moment Kevin mentioned involving a lawyer, Emily panicked and confessed.
I used it to buy pop stars' merchandise.
Apparently, it wasn't even for a famous pop star, just some obscure performer she actually interacted with. Emily insisted it wasn't cheating since she only spent money on him, but having personal interactions made it hard to argue otherwise. Even if it wasn't an affair, misusing funds is a valid reason for divorce. And this wasn't just misusing personal savings. This was embezzlement. That's more than enough grounds for divorce. Even I, with no legal expertise, understood that. Yet Emily refused to accept the divorce.
I finally got you to notice me. There's no way I'm getting a divorce.
What do you mean by finally?
Kevin asked her calmly. It didn't seem like Kevin had been pursued by Emily for a long time to warrant the term finally. She started approaching him shortly after joining the company, and they began dating under the condition of keeping it secret from the employees. Kevin had hoped that, since Emily was competent, she would help support the company in the future.
Besides, I always thought someone as dependable as you was exactly what I needed because I'm so unreliable.
Kevin's self-esteem had suffered because Tom and I often said he was too soft-hearted and unreliable. That was our fault as parents. We only wanted him to be stronger, but now we regretted it deeply. But this wasn't the time for regret or apologies. There would be time later for reflection, apologies, and honest conversations. Right now, the priority was to find out what Emily meant by finally. Was the one who finally paid attention to you not Kevin, but that pop star? I asked, and Emily snapped back in anger.
What's wrong with spending money on the pop star?
I didn't object to her spending money on pop stars, but if that led to personal interactions, it was a different story. I didn't know if it had progressed to the point of cheating, and there was no proof. But one thing was clear. So you admit that you married Kevin not because you liked him, but for his money?
That's right. He's just a boring nice guy, and I did him a favor by marrying him. He should be grateful.
Emily openly admitted she had seen Kevin as nothing more than a source of money. Moreover, she had the audacity to say, "I did him a favor by marrying him," as if she were above us. Honestly, we should have been the ones saying, "We did you a favor by accepting you as a daughter-in-law." I couldn't believe she could say such a thing with a straight face. The issue wasn't that Emily came from a single-parent household, it was her attitude. We hadn't objected to her as Kevin's choice, but now I regretted that decision. Despite insisting she would never agree to a divorce, Emily fell silent when Kevin mentioned his friends who were lawyers. Many of Kevin's college friends had gone on to become attorneys. Some likely worked at law firms specializing in divorce.
If you don't agree to our divorce, I can hire a top lawyer and take this to court.
That was the breaking point. Emily finally agreed to the divorce. Kevin immediately downloaded and printed the divorce papers from our home computer and asked Emily to sign them.
Can't we try again?
Emily tried to plead with him, looking up at him sweetly, but Kevin firmly refused. This was the consequence of treating Kevin and his company like an ATM. Emily treated people who didn't earn money like they were worthless, yet she was the one leeching off others' earnings. You could say she got exactly what she deserved. As Kevin handed her the signed divorce papers and pushed her out of our home, he declared,
I'm staying at my parents' place for a week. Move out during that time.
I didn't know what would happen to Emily, who had also lost contact with her mother, but I doubted she would end up on the streets. The amount Emily had embezzled from Kevin's company was about $50,000.
Judging by precedent, that should result in about 2 years in prison.
After Kevin's company pressed charges, Emily went to trial and received a 2-year prison sentence. Currently, she is also in the middle of a civil suit with Kevin's company over damages. Kevin's company is gradually regaining its business partners now that Emily is gone. Apparently, Emily used to flaunt her future status as the CEO's wife and treated clients and employees with arrogance. Now, thanks to Kevin and the remaining employees showing sincerity, trust is being restored. Kevin has also reflected on his poor judgment of character and now considers others' opinions more carefully. Recently, he's developed an interest in someone and asked Tom and me what we thought. The woman Kevin is interested in is one of Emily's co-workers, the same one Emily dumped the pouch on.
I don't know if it's a good idea for the CEO to date someone from his company.
Tom was concerned, but I was supportive. As long as you can judge a person's character, it doesn't matter whether she's an employee or someone outside the company. I understood Tom's worries, but we couldn't forget that our constant remarks about Kevin being too soft-hearted had hurt his self-esteem. Kevin is kind, but his decision to divorce Emily showed he has the determination to protect his employees as a CEO. He is old enough. No matter how much time passes, Kevin will always be our child, but we've learned that we need to keep our interference to a minimum. We cannot allow our interference to make our precious son unhappy. I still enjoy my sewing hobby and continue to make my profit from it. Tom has been promoted to department head and heads off to work with even more enthusiasm. As a family, we respect each other's individuality and live peaceful, fulfilling lives each day.